is up? My name is Tiffany. This is another Q&A video where you ask questions and I'm going to provide answers. I actually reached out to you last month in November in the community tab of my YouTube channel and asked, do you have any questions? And I had quite a few questions come in that I'm going to be answering with this video. You want to stick around to the very end of this video because at the very end I'm going to be doing my fan fave slideshow where you send me pictures and I attach them to the video and just share what you did in my video. It's my way of kind of showcasing you, which is a lot of fun. So you guys get the very end of this video to share what you made, your makes. And if you want to get in on this in the future, just send me an email or tag me in an Instagram or Facebook post and I will attach those pictures in the slideshow. If I don't have it in the slideshow now, feel free to resend it and I will try to make sure it gets in the next one. No big deal. Same thing with questions. If you have a question that I didn't answer, just make sure to ask it again and I will try to get it in the next Q&A. All right, before I actually officially begin, I want to do a shameless plug right now. My best friend Hannah just wrote a book and published it. It is a published work of art. She is both the author and the illustrator of this entire book, and I am selling it right now on my website, crochetwithtiffany.com. And if you purchase her book, I'm offering a very significant incentive discount that you cannot pass up. That will end at the end of the year. So December 31st will be the very last day to use this coupon code to basically get 25% off your entire purchase, everything you buy. So make sure to buy yourself something this Christmas or this holiday season. Give yourself some love as well and either go ahead and get yourself that pattern you may not have picked up or that kit box you may not have grabbed or even some merch to shout out my YouTube channel. And, just kind of enjoy. All right, so diving right in. I grouped a lot of the questions together because I noticed that there were quite a few repeat questions, people having the same question, but for their different project that they're working on right now. Now, the first question, I'm gonna go ahead and take my shoes off right now because I want to get comfortable. Okay, so the first group of questions that I have right now are in regards to yarn and different colors, hey buddy, oh my goodness, okay, there we go. Different colors. A lot of people are asking, hey, what kind of yarns should you use on certain projects? I had some other questions about, what is the difference between certain yarns and when would you use this particular type of fiber? So Sharanya, you asked a great question, and honestly, this one had me working. So your question was in two parts. You said you have a bunch of yarn in your yarn stash right now. You were wondering what is the best yarn for blankets, cardigans, beanies. Okay. Make yourself comfortable. And honestly, there is no right answer. You could really use whatever type of yarn to make anything. It's just, was that the best yarn for that project? Is the item that you're making, do you want it lightweight or do you want it heavy? Do you want it to just kind of drape over you? Or do you want it to be something that keeps you warm? Do you want it to hold structure? Or is it okay if it's kind of loosey-goosey? Is it okay if it is delicate, drapey? So it's really subjective. You could really use anything. And that's why pattern makers have so much fun. They play with all different fibers and different colors and different sizes of yarn to make everything. And that's why we have so many different variations of patterns, so you just have to have fun with it, trial and error. Okay. And then you asked, you have variegated yarn, self-striping yarn, and solid yarns, but you were wondering if there's any other types of colors and could I explain them in detail? Oh my gosh, girl. Yeah, there's a lot of different types of colors. You have the two main differences. You have solid yarns and you have variegated yarns. Variegated yarns is kind of like an umbrella term that just means there's more than one color in the yarn. So a lot of these terms fall under variegated, and that includes ombre, which is when one color gradually transitions to another color. And you really can't differentiate when one color stops and one color starts. And that's one of my favorite variegated yarns, especially in blankets or wearables, because you don't have that jagged stop, change color. It's so gradual. People often ask me like, how did you get your blanket to hit the row so perfectly with your color changes? It's like, I didn't. It's not. But it's not something you can see very clearly because the color change is so subtle. All right, and then another is tweed. Tweed is when you have multiple different colors of plies that get twisted together. And like this yarn right here, where it's not like one color starts and one color stops. There's a clear differentiation. All the colors are kind of together in the same strand of yarn. Super pretty, fun to work with. Then there's self-striping yarn, and that is, or just striping yarn, and that's when the color of the yarn will just abruptly stop from one color to another. You see this a lot with cakes, mostly with cakes. It'll be one color that lasts for a while and will create like this solid stripe in whatever it is you're making, and then it'll change colors and be next full color, then next full color. And that would be a self-striping yarn or striping. You have metallic yarn, which comes off shiny and kind of like metallic. And then you also, another version of metallic is having that strip, that shiny, sparkly strip string that is twisted along with your yarn to give it just a little twinkle or a little glit glam. And I use this yarn to make my Christmas tree garland, where it was that cord that we made and wrapped around our Christmas tree. That yarn was all white with a silver thread that wrapped around it to give it a little bit of a twinkle. So metallic. There's painted yarn. So there's hand-dyed yarn where you dip the yarn into a dye and let it just wait. But there's also hand-dyed yarn where the yarn is laid out and somebody will actually paint the yarn with paint. And the process takes longer, it's more expensive because there's more involved in it, but the yarn can come out looking really, really neat, very artistic. There's heathered yarn. Usually it's a solid color generally. It's like one color, but the plies in each strand of yarn are different textures. So you'll have like a solid, then you'll have one that has some fuzzies, like highly textured, and then it's twisted, so it kind of looks a little bit like a feather. It has this halo effect around the yarn where it's fuzzy, and it just adds more to the look of it. Prints are more like this guy, where it's sections of different colors or sections of different patterns happening in the strip itself. And this yarn right here is like a fabric yarn that has polyfill stuffed animal stuffing on the inside of the yarn. So this is just kind of showing you the pattern on top, but there's regular yarn too that does the same thing. And then when you work with it, you just kind of go naturally crocheting a stitch and a pattern will develop based on the yarn itself. So you didn't do anything to make that pattern happen. It just hit that way based on how the yarn was created. Flex yarn is where there is a solid color, and then there's going to be another color or multiple colors that will kind of texture off of the one solid color. And this is really neat, adds a lot of depth and dimension and texture to the project you're creating. Very neat. And last I'm going to talk about is marl. But marl isn't really a color, it's more of a technique. So marling is where you take multiple yarn strands and crochet them together. For example, you'll start with 2 yarn strands and they're the same color. So color A, and you'll crochet for however long. And then after a while, you'll drop one color A and you'll add color B. So now you're crocheting with 1 strand color A and 1 strand color B. And you crochet and crochet and crochet, and then you stop and then you drop the other color A, pick up color B. So now you have 1 strand B, 1 strand color B, you're working, and then you drop 1 B and you pull up C. So basically you're like 2 and then 1 and 1, I don't know, like 2 and 2, and then 2 and 3, and then 3 and 3, and then that's just how you create this. It's almost like forcing an ombre effect happening, where it's a transition of the color gradually to another, which is really neat, but you're controlling it. It's a color controlled ombre. Very, very amazing in-depth question, Sharanya. Thank you for asking it. The other questions that kind of were similar and stemmed off that was somebody was asking, Matilda asked, how do you decide what material of yarn to use for a project, and when is it better to use cotton? Now, when it comes to cotton yarns, I like to use cotton yarns whenever I'm making something that will have contact with water, such as coasters or washcloths or even pot holders, because you got to wash them, right? Tote bags, because they get dirty and I'm going to want to wash it. Mats, placemats, anything that's going to get wet, because cotton absorbs water and it works really well with water. And then I also use cotton when I need something to be really strong, or if I know it's going to get dirty and it's going to need to be washed often, because cotton can handle that. Tote bags that I'm going to put heavy stuff in, I want to make with cotton because it holds its structure really well. That's when I'll use a lot of cotton. Okay, next kind of related question. Best yarns for baby blankets. Really, yarn companies have made this super simple. Just look for the baby section or any yarn with the name baby on it, and that's a pretty good indicator that it's going to be baby friendly. Really, anything that's super soft, baby skin is very sensitive, so you want to be careful with what yarn you choose. You want it to be super soft. You also want it to be hyperallergenic. You don't want anything that the fibers will be able to pull off of it in any way, because baby could breathe that in, and that's very dangerous. So there's a lot of safe yarns you can use, but there's also some yarns you want to steer away from. So think those things through often. If you want to be safe rather than sorry, just look for the yarn that's labeled baby and you're pretty good to go. If you can't find it in your store doesn't have it, then go online. All right, Samantha, you asked a couple questions, but I thought the most relevant question that you asked that hasn't been asked a couple other times was, what is the difference between acrylic yarn and wool? Acrylic yarn is man-made. They have managed to figure out how to make those artificial fibers have texture that resembles or looks very close to any wool kind of fibers. And acrylic yarn is very affordable. It's cost effective, which is why it's most popular, because most cheaper yarns are 100% acrylic because they're man-made and cheap to make. Difference is wool is animal hair. Wool is straight from an animal, whether it's a sheep or a llama or an alpaca. That's the epitome of wool, animal hair, natural fibers. And that's why people are allergic to it, because it's animal hair. But it is more natural and it can be a lot softer, but it can also be a lot more expensive. Next group of questions was talking about swatches, which I thought was great. So Karen Allen, you were mentioning that you are following a pattern. There's a swatch in the pattern, and you've made tons of swatches trying to match up with the pattern writer's swatch, and you're just not having any luck making swatches to match the person's, even using the same size yarn, same size crochet hook. It's just not happening. My first question after reading all of that information that you've gone through, your experience going through this, was, is the pattern in US terminology or UK terminology? Believe it or not, that is a huge factor. I've run into this issue personally myself, trying to accomplish something and realizing after the fact that I was using US terminology for a pattern that was written in UK terms. And they don't blatantly come out and say that right up front. Sometimes you have to look for it. What is your terminology? Because it will affect everything, including your stitches that you use. And if that doesn't work for you, then honestly, try to get it as close to your swatch as close as possible to the swatch that was in the pattern, their dimensions. And then do what I did in the swatch series and just take that swatch that you created, find out how many stitches were in each row, how many rows were in that certain amount of inches, and then figure out how many swatches wide your item will be, how many swatches long your item will be, and kind of make your own amount of stitches that you need to make the size of the item that you're trying to make. Or if your stitches are larger than the swatch in the pattern, then maybe try to make the size item that's smaller. And because your stitches are larger, your item will end up coming out the exact same dimensions that you want. Or if your stitches are smaller than the person's in the pattern, make the size larger and kind of even out in a way. You know, that's a trick that some people do too. They make either a size bigger or smaller to what they actually want to get the item size that they desire. So hopefully that helps you, Karen. The next question that was regarding gauge was Miss Weenie Boys 2. Super funny name. I love it. And you were just asking why do we do gauges and how would you use it? And I covered all that information in my swatch series. So I'll make sure I pin that in the description section below so you can click on that and watch it. I'll even put it in the cards up here for you. I go over why we use it, how we get the numbers, and how we use the numbers to achieve anything that we want to achieve. Boom! Awesome. Okay, moving on. Next question here. How do you get back into crocheting? Okay, so this person, Girl Gone Wise, has lost her crojo. She used to crochet all the time. She would crochet baby stuff and she would make it really fast and make a lot of it. And she took some time off of it. She is pregnant, which is congratulations on the pregnancy, but she's just kind of like through morning sickness and through a lot of other things, she's just lost her crojo, and she's like, how do I get that back? And my suggestion was stop, pause, and then restart. Whenever you lose your crojo, you've lost your spark. You've lost your motivation. You've lost your excitement with crochet, and crochet isn't doing for you what it used to. And so we got to stop because whatever we're doing is just making things worse. So if you're working on a project and it's dragging, and honestly working on it is causing you to hate crochet. I think we've all been there with one project. Then you got to stop. Okay. Take all the projects that you have started but haven't finished and frog them. Just take them all apart. All of them. Start fresh. If you have a project that you're highly invested in and you're like, I have to finish this, then set that one off to the side for now. Obviously, working on it right now, forcing it is making things worse. So just put that off to the side for a second. Okay, so we're stopping cold turkey altogether. Then I want you to pause projects. Pause all projects. I want you to go play with your yarn. Go find your yarn. Wherever your yarn stash is, wherever you keep it, if you keep it in totes, in a corner, whatever, I want you to go to your yarn and I want you to touch every single skein of yarn, ball of yarn, hank, cake, donut, whatever that you have. And I want you to remember why you bought that yarn. Was it given to you? Can you get rid of it because it's just kind of looking more like a to-do, a stressful thing than an inspiring project you're excited about? Get rid of it. Or if it sparks like, oh, I got this because I wanted to make that. Or, oh, I don't know what I was going to make with that, but it was beautiful. Just kind of like sit with your yarn. Re-ball it up, cake it up, make it look all pretty. If you don't have very much or the yarn that you have right now is just not inspiring you, not getting you excited, go to the store, find one skein of yarn, at least one, that gets you excited. Okay? We're trying to spark. So that's just kind of like flickering and ignite right there, okay? Small sparks. Then I want you to go to patterns. I want you to find either on Pinterest or books or magazines, something. I want you to find patterns that you are excited to get going. Like, oh, I want to make that. You know, that's what we're going for. I want you to come up with a couple of those that get you really excited to get started, okay? But you're not making them. We're paused right now. Okay, we're getting back to trying to be re-inspired. Then when you get right back into it, when you're restarting back with crochet, start with those quick wins, the small things that you can make and finish within like one sitting or within one day. So, because you want that quick win, so you have that satisfying like, oh, I made that. Like, oh, how cool. Okay, on to the next thing. Not something that's going to keep you in a project where you're like, dang it, now I have to put this down and pick it up again tomorrow or something. Okay. Quick wins are going to help with that ignite, and then you're going to get back in the flow, starting small, starting slow, and then inspired. Got it. Now, maybe what you start doing that inspires you, that excites you, is different than what you used to love doing. You used to love doing baby stuff. Maybe you like doing home stuff now. Maybe you like doing clothes now. Maybe you like doing blankets now. You know, I don't know. But maybe it changes, and that's okay. Embrace it. Embrace it. But that is what I would do. Stop, pause, restart. Awesome. Okay, next, Melanie Crochets is making a granny square cardie. Love it. So excited for you. How cool. Okay, so you're talking about you're asking for the pros and cons of using triangles in the arms or shoulders. Now, this question actually had me pause and scratch my head for a second because I wasn't sure what you were talking about. If you were talking about the sleeve itself being in a triangular shape, or if there were some kind of triangles on the shoulder or the arm somewhere. So if I'm answering this question wrong, please email me, info@crochetwithtiffany.com, or get a hold of me and re-ask it in a different way, so that way I can get a better interpretation of what you're going after. But it kind of clicked for me after a while where I was like, oh my gosh, whenever a pattern for a top is calling for tapered sleeves, it always looks like a triangle. Because what you're going to do is you're going to here's the wrist, here's where the shoulder, top of the arm is. You're going to fold it in half, and then it's going to have this like triangular shape as it attaches to the body of the garment. Now the pros and so if that's what you're going after, pros and cons to the triangle sleeve. Pros are it is more form-fitting, it's more flattering, it can be more comfortable to wear. But the cons are sometimes we're given kind of like a first dimension of how wide the wrist should be and how wide the shoulder should be at the top. And like this is the length, but they don't really tell us when to decrease or when to increase the rows to get this slant exactly the way we want. So if the pattern does show you that, that's great. If it doesn't, that can be frustrating because now you have to figure that out. It can also be a pain in the butt if you want to adjust the sleeve because you want to make it shorter or longer, just making sure you're hitting the dimensions so everything aligns correctly. And if you're making a cuff on the wrist, you're going to want to take that into consideration as well. So yes, there are some pros to making a tapered sleeve, but there can be some cons too, where it just can be annoying, pain in the butt. Just make it solid, can be easier, but that's completely up to you. Okay, next one I got here. Okay, so Bo Mama 8, love it. You were asking, you're talking about making a cardigan for your grandchildren, and you thought you saw the pattern on my channel and you lost it. You can't find it. I don't have one yet. I was going to push one out. I have one that I follow. I think it's a Bernat pattern or a Yarn Inspirations pattern. It's free, super easy for the youngsters, and it is 3 panels. I don't have one out yet. Eventually I might, but I don't. So you didn't find it on mine, but you could probably find a great pattern on yarnspirations.com. That's where I found mine. I recommend that. You were talking about a hood, wanting to know how to add a hood to a cardigan. Here's what I would do. So the slit in the middle here, I would grab 2 stitch markers, and from the slit, symmetry, even on both sides, I'd find a starting place where I'd want the hood to begin. And then using the same stitch I used for the cardigan itself, I would just kind of go from this point to that point, back and forth, making a triangle coming upward. And then we're going to want to join the top this way. So make it tall enough where it'll fit over the head when you come closed. But before you join it, flip the cardigan inside out. Then join the top, seam the top up. I start at the front open corners, start here, connect, and then go back to where it's folded. That way, if there's any slant, it kind of evens out. If you start here at the fold and work forward, it could happen where there's a shift and then the front 2 corners don't align. So if you just start at the front and work back, so much easier. And then when you are done seaming it, flip it inside right again. And then the join at the top is inverted instead of like this weird point at the top, which looks interesting. It's inverted and looks cleaner. So that's what I would do for you. Brenda Henson is working on a basket. The pattern calls for an HHDC, and you weren't sure what that does or what that is. An HHDC is just a herringbone half double crochet stitch. That's it. I do have a YouTube video on my channel for the herringbone half double crochet stitch. Definitely recommend you looking at that because I go slow and I repeat, and it's a really good video and it's a really beautiful stitch. So I'm going to put that in the description section as well, a link, and put it in the cards right here for you for the herringbone half double crochet. Hope that helps you out. Right, I have two questions about stockings. So Brenda Lester has a stocking pattern from Hobby Lobby, having issues with the heel, not able to figure it out. And then Abby Nicole Crochet. Hi. You were wondering about the dimensions of my classic crochet Christmas stocking on my channel. Okay, the dimensions of my Christmas stocking measure 19 inches from the top to the bottom, and then it's 6.5 inches wide. So if you lay the stocking flat, then and go side to side, it's 6.5 inches from side to side, not circumference. Okay, I thought it was a very generic size stocking that you can go with. And then depending on your crochet tension and depending on the yarn that you use, that might change the size of the stocking. Brenda, when it comes to the heel, you can follow my tutorial on my channel for the classic crochet Christmas stocking. I have a heel section that you can see if that will work for the heel that pattern or the stocking pattern that you got from Hobby Lobby. The heels are done so many different ways, really, from just like actually crocheting a square or rectangular section apart from the work and then attaching, like whip stitching, attaching the heel to the project. There's lots of different things you can do. I hope it helps. Then I have 1, 2, 3 questions on blanket sides being straight. So I thought this was really interesting. So Whitney Webb is making the Sugar Plum Fairy blanket. One side is straight, the other side is angling. Susan McKnight, you are making a ripple blanket, but both sides are starting to ripple outward, or not ripple, the kind of lean outwards, and you make lots of these blankets. You're not sure why it's sloping, and you count your stitches and they're all the same, not sure. And then MCM Vlogs, you're also wondering about straight edges and how to fix them. Okay, so first things first with all of you. 90% of the time, the reason why a blanket will start to slope inward or outward is because the stitch count has got off. Is off. You've either added stitches or dropped stitches somewhere, usually in the beginning or end of the project, of the row. So definitely check your stitches. Every now and then, periodically, you should be counting the number of stitches are in each row anyway. Even an experienced crocheter does it. I do it no matter what anyway. Even if it's a super easy, basic pattern, I will count every so many rows to make sure I'm staying on track. It's just something fundamental that you got to do. And it helps so much. You could also use stitch markers on the very first stitch and very last stitch of every row and keep working them up so you make sure you can hit that stitch and not miss it. Honestly, sometimes it's a yarn tension thing, like at the beginning of your blanket where you start off and your tension is tighter, and then as you work it loosens up and you start getting your rhythm, or at the beginning your yarn tension is looser, so everything kind of is out and it comes in this way because you get your rhythm and it all evens out. Ways of fixing that right there: if your stitches are bigger in the beginning, start with a smaller crochet hook, and then at row 1, 2, switch to the crochet hook you want for the rest of the project. Or if your stitches are really tight in the foundation row, start with a larger crochet hook in the foundation row, and then at row 1, row 2, switch to the crochet hook that you want to use for the rest of the project. That has helped a lot of people. It's a common trick I've heard a lot. And honestly, sometimes it's just a small variation that you can fix by finishing the blanket and adding a border around it. Covers up a lot of those variations in the side there by adding a border or blocking your project. I have a blocking for beginners video that I will put in the description section and cards here as well for you to reference. It's super easy peasy. I go through it for a beginner level person to know how to block. You just get the item wet in a certain way and then pin it down and let it air dry, and then it stays those perfect sides that you want so much. So those are some options for you guys. And then the last thing I have here is Crafting with Laura. You do ask if I have any tutorial requests, or do I take any tutorial requests? And the answer is no, not at this time. For 2023, I'm going to be very strategic, and I already have everything planned out very specifically on what I'm going to be doing. So if I am going to do any requests, it's going to be 2024 that I may start doing that. Even a lot of the requests I've had up to this point, a lot of people have asked me to make things for 2023. I just have to be super strategic in my planning. So I'm dropping any requests that I've had received already, and I'm not taking any for 2023. All right, guys, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed researching your questions, learning so much more, like Marling. Oh my gosh, literally your questions educate me. And I am ever and always learning and growing, as are you, I hope. And this is super fun to do. And it's always good to just kind of continue to learn and grow in anything that we're passionate about. So with that, guys, I am now going to transition us to the fan slideshow, where I am going to be sharing with you all of those fun pictures that were sent in to me of the amazing things that you have created. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the slideshow, and I will see you with the next video. Bye, guys.